So, to start, is Andrew Tate guilty or innocent?
I personally think there's enough out there that Andrew Tate himself has said that unless he's lying about what he's done, he's obviously guilty of at least a few things, namely defrauding the women that he gets to work for him, probably sex trafficking via the lover boy method. But I don't think anybody should be convicted of a crime unless adequate evidence is brought forth in a fair court, and then he's had his day to defend himself. So I think he's probably guilty, but I think we should wait and see how the process plays out.
Okay. And what is your take?
Yeah, my take is looking at the evidence and looking at the data that we have in front of us, I don't believe he's guilty. And that's all we can base it on is the evidence as opposed to snippets on YouTube or things that have been phrased or portrayed in a certain way via social media.
Okay. So, Destiny, you mentioned the lover boy method. Do you think that the lover boy method is actually sex trafficking, and why?
I don't have thoughts on it, or it's not like my goal is to define like what is sex trafficking. I just go by what the laws are, and usually the questions are: is he guilty of the crime of sex trafficking? And the lover boy method is defined as sex trafficking, I believe, in most countries, because at least in Romania, and I think in most countries, if you are able to get a girl to do sex work using a coercive or fraudulent method, meaning you're misleading them as to what your relationship is, then that would constitute sex trafficking if you exploit them afterwards for sex work.
Okay. And what about you?
Yeah, I agree with what Destiny said just towards the end. So basically, lover boy method is a method by which human trafficking occurs. So if someone did lover boy method on its own, that would not be a crime. So what makes it a crime is when you do the lover boy method and then you meet the requirements of human trafficking, and therefore you then meet the standard. So on its own, lover boy method, a person would not be convicted of human trafficking solely based on lover boy method.
So where do you guys disagree then?
I mean,
it seems like you're kind of on the same page.
I mean,
with that.
I actually don't know what Destiny's position is, so I'd actually like to...
Yeah, well, my position is we should wait and see what the court system does. I think everything they've done up to this point has been A-OK, seems to be by the books. And then I think we should wait and see how the process plays out. I believe there's, in Romanian law, up to a maximum of 180 days that they can remain detained while they finish their investigation. And then it's up to the Romanian court to decide whether or not they want to bring charges to the Tates.
Right, so in terms of what Destiny said, I don't think that they've done everything A-OK. That's the first point. And the second point is I do believe that they've contravened certain domestic as well as international laws. And then separate to that, when you look at the remanding someone for 180 days, although that doesn't contravene law, I have serious issues with that as well.
Could you say the second part of that again?
Yeah. So the 180 days, although that is within Romanian law, I have serious issues with it, and I can expand on that if you want.
Okay. Yeah. Could you tell me why?
Yeah, of course. So basically, we have a scenario where in Romania you can basically detain someone without having adequate evidence to prosecute or convict. So essentially, you detain someone, take away their liberty and rights, put them in prison, and then say, guess what, I'm looking for evidence. Now, I understand a lot of people may not understand the problems with this, but coming from the background that I am, being a Muslim, being an Asian, a lot of our community have been through this, both in the United States and the United Kingdom, when your liberty is taken away without due process, without having a trial, without evidence being submitted. And so for us, from the perspective of minorities and from that perspective, we have serious issues because that was used to terrorize our community for more than 20 years. So yes, I will speak out about that, even if it's in the United States, the United Kingdom, Romania, France. I think it's a serious issue when you could take away someone's liberty without having adequate evidence. And 6 months is horrendous to take away someone's liberty. That's a significant period of someone's life to say, we haven't got enough evidence, we're going to jail you for 6 months and then we're going to look for the evidence.
Do you agree with him or no?
I would if what he was saying was true. So
okay.
I feel like there's a lot of tricky word games being played when we talk about detaining somebody without enough evidence. So in the Romanian legal system, if you are in the finishing stages of an investigation, you can detain somebody while you finish that investigation up, especially if you believe that the people that you're detaining might be a flight risk. You can detain somebody without having enough evidence to charge them with a crime or convict them of a crime, obviously. But you do require compelling evidence to detain somebody, which is left to the discretion of the judges that are ruling on the case. I've noticed that you've quoted that that document sometimes, the one that was released in, it was either November or December, where the judge said that there's not enough evidence to convict of a crime. You said that several times, but they're not looking for enough evidence to convict them of a crime. What the judge was supposed to evaluate was, is there enough evidence to warrant detaining them? And he did feel like there was enough evidence at that time. And the statements that he's made and the Romanian criminal code are all completely okay with the UN and with the United States and with any other international legal body. So I don't understand when we try to push against the Romanian legal system why we say things like it's against international law or it's against international freedoms when this is how the Romanian criminal court system has been structured. It's one of the reasons why Andrew Tate, verbally said he was going to move there. I don't agree that it's in violation of any international laws. If it is, I'd like to hear which ones.
Sure, of course, I can answer that, Destiny. So I'll answer your first point about in terms of the level of evidence that was required to remand him. So my position is that it's unacceptable to remand someone when you haven't got enough evidence to prosecute or to convict. The threshold to hold someone isn't the way you framed it, where it's very close to basically prosecute or convict. The evidence is based on reasonable suspicion, so the bar is very low to meet that threshold, hence why I have a problem with it. If the bar was much higher, was close to beyond reasonable doubt, maybe even if it was balance of probability, we could maybe talk about that and look at the possibility of why that would be acceptable. But when the balance is reasonable suspicion, the bar is very low, it's easy to meet, and that's why I think it's unacceptable. First point. Second point, in terms of where they've contravened international law, that's a separate issue. So I will go into that because I know you've asked a fair question. So I'll just go through it. So first of all, Article 5.1 of the European Commission, which is incorporated into Romanian law, so it breaks European law as well as domestic Romanian law, states that whenever you provide evidence or prosecution provides evidence, he has to provide evidence both for and against his stance. That's not happened. He has not included evidence, which is, for example, the CCTV evidence. He has not included, for example, evidence which is long-form text messages, which include the entirety of the conversation. He's not included the witness statements, 3 of the witness statements of the alleged victims who say they're not victims. So those are examples of contravening Article 5.1. They've contravened Article 9.2, which this one we can argue because the first one I don't think there'll be much argument, but the second one, 9.2, is you can only detain on exceptional circumstances, and then 9.4 is that basically it's illegal to detain someone unless the circumstances are exceptional. And in this case, the exceptionality or the illegality or the problematic issue was that basically the psych report was used as a basis to detain them, and the psych report has significant issues in it, and I can go into depth in that if you want. Would you like me to, or shall I move on?
Well, I guess for the first point that you bring up, we should get a notepad to write down on.
A notepad?
Yeah, unironically. For the first point that you bring up, so saying that you need beyond probable doubt.
Reasonable.
Or beyond reasonable doubt.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Reasonable suspicion.
Okay, reasonable suspicion. Yeah. I think it's maybe fair to take issue with these things, but I mean, different courts across different countries are allowed to set up their legal systems in the ways that they see fit. And the Romanian courts are set up in a way that is in accordance with the European Commission. The judge himself references the EC and provides the evidence that they have for the EC in the statement that he released in order to make sure that it was on the up and up. I understand the desire to critique the Romanian legal system. I wouldn't want to live in a system like that personally, but that's why I moved to I live in the United States. I haven't moved to another country to participate in that legal system.
You have the Patriot Act. You have the Patriot Act in the United States as well. We have the similar provisions in the United Kingdom.
We might, but I'm just saying that the Tates specifically moved to Romania because they said they wanted to specifically take advantage of that legal system. There are videos of Tate saying, "Lock me up in jail. I'll give him $1,000 and I'll be out and I'll have a masseuse and blah blah blah." And he's saying that, and he moved to that system, and that system is legal insofar as the EU framework is concerned, because nobody's challenged it, nobody has said anything about it, and I think that to try to call out that particular way of doing things now, I think rings a little bit hollow.
Okay, I'll answer that, and then we can move on to the Article 5 point. So in terms of the reasonable suspicion, yeah, again, I have a huge problem with it. Irrespective of Andrew Tate thought he was in a situation where there was leniency in the law, that was error on his part, but it doesn't mean that just because someone makes a silly decision and assumes that certain laws, that is unaware of the legalistic system in a certain country, that he should then, the harshness of it, we should ignore as well. In terms of the harshness of it, the reason why we have severe issues is because I can understand why you may not understand it, but people from the minority community who have been abused and terrorized by these laws, they understand what the problem is by it. And so for us, we're not just hating on the Romanian system, we're saying anywhere in the world that has detention without having a significant amount of evidence where you know you can prosecute or convict is something that we will speak out about, and it's wrong. So it's not just the Romanian system. I said Romania, US, UK, France, whichever country is detaining people with only based on minimal level of evidence, which is reasonable suspicion, is completely inappropriate, unacceptable, and we will speak out against it irrespective of who's being detained. And so we have that in Guantanamo Bay, when significant amounts of people from the Muslim community who are being detained without due process based on reasonable suspicion and have never been to trial.
Do you think that Guantanamo Bay, a military prison set up outside of the United States in order to maintain like foreign prisoners or terrorists, like people without uniforms, do you think that's comparable to what's happening right now in the Romanian criminal court system?
So you make a fair point, because it's not comparable in the sense of the time length, because some of them have spent 20 years.
Yeah.
But it's comparable in the sense of the aspect of, and so I'd give that as an extreme example. That's an example. But also people get detained for like 14 days, 28 days, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months without it. All of that is unacceptable. So
okay, but to be clear, when you say unacceptable, you mean to you. It's not violating any international law. You just personally don't like it.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
Well, when I say I personally don't like it, I think it's something that as someone who is a member of the community of the world, irrespective of what it is, and because you don't experience it, you probably don't realize, but it's a major issue for all of us, and it has been for 20 years.
That's fine, but we haven't been talking about it for 20 years. We've been talking about it for the past 3 months, really, with the Andrew Tate case.
Well, we've been talking about it for 20 years.
Sure, I'm sure some people have.
Yeah.
If you want to have a personal issue with how some people do detainments without, I guess, meeting a certain threshold of publicly available evidence, I think that's an interesting conversation to have. But I'm pretty sure that this particular thing has to do with the Andrew Tate case, and these particular opinions have to do with opinions about the legal system, not whether or not it's actually violating international law. So I don't like the framing of, I don't think this is fair, therefore it violates statements or guidelines by the European Commission, or it's violated, right? Yeah.
That wasn't my point. So, because you're conflating my 2 points. So my point was about reasonable suspicion, specifically why I have a problem with it. Very clear that did not break international law. I actually said it didn't. My proof of why it breaks international law, I cited Article 5, and I'm going to cite another 5, 6 more legislations what it breaks. That hasn't got to do with reasonable suspicion. That's got to do with evidence.
Okay. So
first one was Article 5.1, which says that basically the prosecution has a duty to provide. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, what happens is the prosecutor gains the information. And this is the same in Romania, where it should be according to Article 5.1 as well as according to international law. What the prosecutor does is he gets the information. He looks at it. Look, this is the strong points for my case, but actually these are the weak points because this proves the defendant's case. I'm going to collate all of that and give it to the prosecutor. So this, in this case, is DICOT. And then the prosecutor then makes a decision based on both of the evidence and decides, wait a sec, the evidence isn't strong enough. Because our case is weak at this point, I'm not going to take this forward to prosecute. And so in the United Kingdom, the prosecutor is called the CPS. I'm saying this, where he's contravened international law, Article 5.1, is he did not provide the evidence that weakens his own case to be able to prosecute. So that was my first point.